Hey, what's up, life designers? Welcome to Intentional Tuesdays. There's a lot of really great advice going around these days about the best way to deal with the trying times and the challenges of this coronavirus pandemic. I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes I am almost as much overwhelmed by the different sources of advice than I am about the actual virus situation itself. There's just so much information out there. It's hard for me to keep track of what I should be doing, what I shouldn't be doing, and frankly, what I should prioritize. So if this is something that you've been struggling with, then I think this week's Intentional Tuesdays will be right up your alley because I'm going to give you the two most fundamental, the two most basic things that we need during this time of crisis. And I think if you stick to these two things and you do them with consistency and with intention, you will be far better off than just about anything else you can do. So if that sounds interesting to you, then stick with us because we are going to jump right in. So the two practices that I'm going to offer you are about as basic as it gets. In fact, their power, the magic, is in the simplicity. Now, these are things that we have been doing for thousands of years. They're things that we do, each one of us does every single day. The difference is that I'm going to suggest that you go about these two practices with deep intention and regularity. The two practices that I'm going to suggest that we each need to incorporate into our lives right now are one, an intentional stillness practice, and two, an intentional movement practice. Now, I told you these two things are pretty basic. In fact, I would go so far as to call them primitive. There's nothing complex happening here, and there's nothing that needs to be intimidating or really overthought here. The magic with stillness and with movement are in the intention and the awareness and the choice to incorporate these two elements into our lives. The magic is in actually doing it. It's not in the thing itself, it's in the doing of the things. So let's first talk about stillness. And it really is as simple as it sounds. In these times, most people are experiencing a tremendous amount of chaos and flux and uncertainty. And our energy levels tend to be very high at the moment when we're dealing with this type of chaotic environment. So, a stillness practice is basically throughout the day, from time to time, choosing to do something that causes your mind to be still, to be fully present in the moment. And there are so many different ways to accomplish this. I can't even begin to list all of them. It could be anything from contemplative prayer to traditional mindfulness meditation practices or even art. Anything that you do to just slow down, to just take it down a couple of notches, and to just allow yourself to not be thinking about all the problems, all the stresses, all the things that you have to do or the things that you're not getting done, and just simply be present to the current moment. Just for a little bit of time, maybe just 5 minutes at a time. That's all a stillness practice has to be. Now, personally, I've got a couple of stillness practices that I've been incorporating more into my life these days with a slightly different flavor than my normal practices. For one, I've been trying a different type of meditation. It's from a book that I've enjoyed called The Warrior's Meditation. I will include a link to it down below. And I just, if you're a meditator already, this is going to be nothing new to you. It's just a slightly different spin on meditation, but I like it because it's very active and it involves multiple senses at the same time. But really, any meditation practice will suffice. And the other practice that I've incorporated is an art practice. I've just taken up drawing. And I'm a terrible drawer. I don't consider myself to have any artistic talent, but I've taken up this practice of trying to draw. And in doing so, I'm not really focused on the quality of my drawings as much as I am focused on the quality of my attention, the quality of my effort. And because I'm not a very good drawer, I have to really focus in the moment. And for me, that has become a very mind relaxing, a very stillful type of a practice. Now, I would draw a contrast to, for example, reading a book. At least for me, reading a book tends to not be a very still practice. My mind tends to race when I'm reading a book, and I tend to be thinking a lot. So, with a stillness practice, we want to be not thinking necessarily. That's not the goal. So, you have to choose your own stillness practice carefully. But I would caution you against choosing a practice that is likely to get your brain really racing. The other practice I would probably probably discourage you from would be simply watching television. Although there are some, for some people that actually might be a very quieting kind of stillness practice. The reality is watching television tends to put us almost in a trance, which probably isn't exactly the same effect that we're after here. You're probably not going to get that kind of calming, centered stillness. But if that's the best you can muster, then perhaps even watching television or reading a book would work for you. The key here is to be intentional about it and to be doing the practice with the goal of slowing down and bringing your mind to a different level where you're much more calm, much more present, and not worrying about everything that's going on around you. And the key is to do it regularly. I've gotten to the point now where I schedule a stillness practice every single hour. And I only do it in total for about 5 minutes, but I'm doing it 5 minutes of every hour. And for me, it's been a really powerful shift, and I find that it helps me a lot during these unusual times. So the second practice, movement, is equally crucial, and I find it's also very pertinent at the moment because given the nature of this particular situation with quarantining and being unable to go places, a lot of us have activities that we rely on that we can't do anymore because of various restrictions. For example, I used to get my exercise by going to the gym in the evenings, and that was a routine that I had really gotten myself into. And now, obviously, the gym is closed. I can't go there anymore. I used to get a good amount of movement each morning when I would walk to the coffee shop. That's about a mile and a half away from where I live. I would walk to and from the coffee shop each morning, and that movement was pretty much baked into my routine. And of course, that practice is now gone as well. So I've had to really go out of my way to incorporate movement into my day, and this is what I recommend that you think about as well. And it doesn't need to be overly complex. It doesn't need to be overly strenuous movement. As long as we are getting some kind of intentional movement into your day, I think that will be a benefit for most people. I have personally taken to, once again, I do this every hour. Something as simple as just doing 20 or so air squats. I'll step out from behind my desk and I will do 20 or so air squats, maybe 20 push ups. I've got a pull up bar that I was able to hang over my office door and I can knock out a few pull ups. Again, the key here is that I'm doing it every hour and I'm putting this into my schedule. I actually set my phone to go off every hour as a little bit of a reminder that I have to do my stillness practice and then I have to do my simple movement practice. And I've really found that doing this movement throughout the day, even though the whole routine, if I combine the two practices into a single block of time, it takes about 5 minutes. We're not talking about a real time commitment, but the reality is I find that I'm actually creating time in a sense because I become more focused, I become more energized, and it's as if the 5 minute investment really pays off on the other side. But the key here is you have to be intentional. You have to really want to put these two elements of stillness and movement into your day. And the reality is, if you don't, you're going to pay the price. If you don't work a stillness practice into your day, you're going to become exhausted. You're going to become overwhelmed. You're going to succumb to the chaos, and you won't be your best self if you're not thinking clearly, if you're not having the right perspective on things. You are not your best self. You're really not serving anyone. So it may feel that you don't have time for stillness, but the reality is that's the time when you need stillness the most. And of course, with regards to movement, these are times when it's so easy to make compromises rather on the quality of the food we're eating, the quality of the rest that we're getting. Movement is going to be key. This is not going to be an overnight thing. That's one thing that I noticed about myself is at first I was treating this whole coronavirus like a special event, and with a special event I would treat myself to special treatment around my food or my exercise habits. But this is not going to go away overnight. So you really have to bake in good, solid routines that are going to be sustainable and sustaining. So working in a movement practice, working in a stillness practice, these are the two most fundamental things that you can be doing to keep yourself in a good, sustainable position going forward. So that's it for this week's Intentional Tuesday. I hope you found it useful. Hope you found it applicable. I look forward to our paths crossing again in the not too distant future. Until that day, I wish you all the best and prosperous journey. Take care.